So John Lang lived in Fresno, California, and worked at a small tire and brake shop. He'd previously been married, but he was divorced in 2011, having at least one child with his former wife. John was considered by many to be a local activist and actually worked diligently to discuss local illegal activities, that's a hard word to say, that impacted his city. One of those discussions involved the Fresno Police Department allegedly running a ticketing scam on their local residents. John claimed that the Fresno PD had developed a scam in which they would scan license plates of cars that were parked in various parking lots, a practice which is illegal in Fresno. They would then use this information that they gathered from the plates to pull the drivers over just a few blocks away and issue them a ticket, with John insinuating that these drivers had done nothing wrong, and these tickets were supposedly only being issued as a way to gain revenue for the city. He says that the police department had gained millions of dollars doing this, yet the idea was completely illegal and punishable under local law. He says that he conducted a personal investigation and confirmed that a scam was taking place. He took this information to a man named Jody Murray at the local newspaper, the Fresno Bee, and asked for help to write an anonymous column about the illegal activity. He was told that his name would be kept confidential and that officers would never be informed about his investigation, though he soon learned that Jody had been leaking this information to a sheriff's sergeant, providing the sergeant with John's IP address, allowing his supposedly anonymous allegations to be tracked down and revealing his home address. John also claims that Jody had been keeping track of people who left negative comments on the newspaper's webpage, giving this information to local police in an effort to intimidate these people into silence. These allegations reached a boiling point when John told the story about a time that he listed a jet ski on Craigslist. He received a call from a person who was interested in the jet ski, though he didn't reveal their name. He says that 3 people showed up at the meeting, and he felt as though one of the men was employed by the local police, citing his stature, his mannerisms, and his cropped hair as his reasonings for believing this. However, he quickly learned that the second man who appeared was none other than Jody Murray, the employee of the local newspaper publication. He didn't recognize the third man, but he mentioned that he was riding a newer model motorcycle and was a heavy-set guy. Immediately afterward, John says that he believed the police had bugged his phone, with him filing a police harassment complaint. Soon after, however, the complaint was largely ignored, and the harassment just grew from there. He began to mention how he would be stopped outside of his home and repeatedly bothered by police officers, and this grew to such a degree that he installed cameras around his home to monitor the exterior of his house. He would capture video of these supposed encounters and then later post them on his YouTube channel, which is still active today. Several of these videos can kind of be a bit hard to believe, as it kind of seems as though they could just simply be people walking by and he's getting approached by random people. But a couple of these videos actually stand out. One video shows a blacked out van pull up in front of his home. The side door of the van then opens, and a man sticks a camera out of the van, clearly filming John's home. John says that he believes this was a heat-sensitive camera, allowing police to know specifically where he was inside of his home. After a few moments, the door closes and the van just drives away. Another video shows numerous officers approach his home in squad cars, parking outside of his home and then just staring into the guy's house. No one knows for sure what they were actually doing, but they were very clearly trying to intimidate him. But John refused to back down on his investigation. He continued digging into the past and present of the Fresno PD and revealed numerous details of corruption in the Fresno PD, dating all the way back to the 1970s. He mentioned a man named Jerry Dyer, who'd been the Fresno chief of police from 2001 to 2019. Jerry was supposedly accused of sexually assaulting a teenage girl while employed by the Fresno PD. He also found information regarding 200 cases of police brutality, with nearly 50% of these cases being dismissed without any sort of proper investigation. In 2009, 2 officers were seen beating a homeless man. In 2014, an officer attempted to sell a stolen truck to a local dealer. In 2006, illegal substances were found inside the home of a Fresno officer, but the investigation was quickly closed, claiming the drugs belonged to a relative. In 2015, an officer was caught accepting a bribe from a drug lord. Later in 2015, another officer was charged with crimes involving illegal substance distribution. And once again in 2015, an officer was accused of sexually assaulting an unconscious woman. Finally, in 2018, after John had already passed away, a 7-year-old girl accused an officer of sexually assaulting her. A brief investigation found illegal images of children on his phone, but the case was closed and the officer remains a free man to this day. John continued to document issues with police for over 7 years. However, in January of 2016, the local fire department was called to the home of John after a fire had broken out. Firefighters did their best to extinguish the blaze, and John was found inside of his home, having suffered from multiple stab wounds and passing away almost instantly. The original report claimed that John had been attacked with a knife in both his front and his back and suffered a wound in his lower back close to his pelvis. However, this report was very quickly amended a short while later, with officers claiming that his back was never wounded and all of the wounds were on the front of his body. This report was supposedly altered so officers could pursue a story claiming that John had inflicted the wounds on himself in an effort to end his own life. Police claimed that they have video recordings from inside of his home where John supposedly set up CCTV inside, but we don't have any documentation to prove that this is actually true. But police claim that they saw him walking past a CCTV camera on the inside of his home with a knife on 2 separate occasions, but they refused to release these videos. In the end, John's case was quickly reclassified from being suspicious to being a suicide case, and it was closed as quickly as it had been opened. But the most eerie moment of all came less than a week before John lost his life. He took to Facebook and linked to a video that showed a van that was labeled Fresno Carpet Cleaning, with him claiming the van was acting suspicious outside of his home. He then stated, "If I turn up dead tomorrow, remember this van." That was the last we ever heard from John. So I'm curious what you guys think about all this. A lot of people online seem to insist that John was just mentally ill and was suffering some sort of severe paranoia, and that definitely makes a lot of sense, until you take into account the video footage that he posted to his YouTube channel showing several very obvious signs of intimidation from the local police. If it weren't for these videos, obviously no one would have really believed John's story. And in the end, I definitely think John was likely onto something, and police shut his mouth before he could see the investigation through. I can't say that with like 100% certainty or anything that that's what happened, but it definitely kind of makes sense to me. Were the Fresno police to blame for John's demise, or was he just a mentally ill guy suffering from a very severe bout of paranoia?